First up, the right is outraged that not only is Bad Bunny playing the halftime show, but now the refs are giving lap dances to players. Next, we sent a correspondent out to review some of the best costumes in the Portland protests, only to discover that this was what these people identified as, and that we were actually being insensitive. Next, amidst inflation, has Trump picked South America for new wars to save on travel costs and free up more spending for bombs? Next, thanks to Donald Trump, George Santos gets a second chance at grifting. And lastly, Donald Trump works to make the steaks cheaper and to make sure your wife doesn't eat that much of it.
People try and tell you what you gotta do. Don't listen to them unless you think it's true. Follow your heart and your dreams. Follow your heart and your dreams.
Everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of the Run Your Mouth podcast. It is a pleasure to be with you all, and we're coming to the end of Porch Tour, my friends. We've porched further than we've ever porched, done more than we've ever done, and if you're out in California this weekend, Aguanga is probably the big show, because I got Fast Heart Mart opening up. I got Brian McWilliams on both shows, and then we're doing Santa Monica on Sunday, which will be early evening, afternoon day drinker, and then I'll get on a flight back to New York, and then Wednesday night, Bridgeport, Connecticut. I'm actually opening up for my buddy Menu and Heart, who's absolutely hilarious. We're doing a little thing by my Shedcast boys. They've got a little studio space. That's going to be a bit of a concert. There's only a couple tickets available for that. Pub Key in New York City, Boston, Massachusetts, New Hampshire Saturday night. We're going to be in the basement of this giant-ass mansion, and then Providence, Rhode Island, a bar that I did last year, doing all material from last year. And then I'm just running through all the dates. We're coming to the end of the tour here, everybody. And then we're going to do Jacksonville, Savannah, Charleston, hang out for a couple days, do a show outside of New Orleans, doing Skankfest, home for a little bit, and then just added to Colorado, and that's it for the year. Listen, come out this weekend in California and come out to next weekend's shows. I'm going to be filming stuff. I wrote all sorts of sketches I'm really excited about, which you won't see on the live show, but going to piece together a bit of a mockumentary. Porchtour.com. All right, couple of quick topics, then let's get into all the news because we do have quite a bit to get through, and then probably going to do another episode this weekend. I don't know which show. I'm just going to surprise the audience and let them know if they want to hang out. I'm doing a live podcast with Brian. But firstly, off the bat, I would like to say that I really respect how much television Donald Trump is doing right now, because he's engaging in more television than I can watch of the television he's doing. I mean, the career that this man had in media that has given him the TV legs. I know what it's like to do an hour of podcasting a day and then go do stand-up shows at night. And Donald Trump can just spend his entire day on television just rattling off more and more noise and bullshit. And you just got to respect an old man who has that much hustle left in him. Bring more cameras in here. I got more to say. Let's have another meeting. Let's televise us having dinner. Let's do a meeting by the plane. Let's do a meeting from the Oval Office. Let's do a meeting walking to the Oval Office. I'm just saying, I respect just how much television this guy's pumping out right now. And we're going to get into a little bit later some of the tall tales of the potential grifting that Donald Trump's doing. But, man, he just needs to be selling ads on the television he's doing. He needs a piece of that action, because the amount of content that guy's creating on a daily basis, you just got to respect it. All right, now listen, I have not been following the Cuomo-Mamdani New York City mayoral race. I did watch a little bit of the debate that they had, and I just feel like this is such an American situation that we find ourselves in, where you got a choice between a full-on socialist or the guy who killed your grandma. And if you've ever seen anything that's more like the South Park tampons versus turd sandwiches of, well, I'm not showing up to vote, it's that you clearly don't want to support the socialist, but don't you hate when the more reasonable the options is the guy who sold the country in COVID, boosted the death numbers, and killed people's grandmas, and then wasn't strong enough to stay in office because a bunch of sexual assault victims came forward and said that they sexually assaulted him, and then he just got let off for that, and now he gets to run for mayor again, and no one has to explain what happened there? If you got a bunch of evil women making false claims and they're getting away with it, or if this guy got away with false claims, and why the false claims are only important enough to get him out from his office seat, but not important enough to actually keep him from rerunning? All I'm saying is to find yourself in a situation where Cuomo is the person that you'd rather see win. I mean, have you seen anything that better states the situation of politics? All right, let's get into everything that we got going on in the episode, brought to you by YoKratom.com, only place in the entire world where you can get an entire kilo of Kratom for just $6. Go scour the internet. Find a better deal in Kratom. And that's even with all the inflation we've heard about over the last couple years. The Kratom people keep it together and still bring you guys kilos of Kratom for just $60. All right, let's take a couple of comments. We'll start with Trout Slap. What's the story behind your moniker, The Fire? Don't you feel it in your soul as I talk? Don't you just feel it? Don't you feel that energy? It's Louis J. Gomez knighted me with the name. I would not have the audacity to call myself The Fire, but Louis J. Gomez knighted me. We had a bit of a ceremony. I had to hold his penis. And now I get to walk around with the title. As brought to you by Louis J. Gomez. I feel like I need to turn that light on. My producer, man, he's trying to make me look, he's trying to fill my face up with shadows to make me look older than I am. And he forgot to turn on my fancy studio lights. But we'll just ignore it. No one needs to mention it. No one needs to call it out. All right. Fraunlaven, Robert, you should do blackface and rebrand the Porch Monkey Tour. That's inappropriate. I can't even read that comment out loud. Are you trying to get my channel shadow banned? Jeff Graber saying he'll see me out in Colorado. Excellent. Looking forward to seeing you guys there. That's an interesting one. There were no late night flights. I got like a 6 p.m. flight, and I'm playing Steamboat that Friday and Saturday. I will promote those gigs closer too. I got to get the links together. But then I decided to add a Sunday show at Inga's Cool Bar out there. Fan hit me up. Mom owns a bar, and we're going to be doing a 1 p.m. day drinker. And let me tell you, the Sunday afternoon day drinkers are a good time. All right, let's get into the episode. We got a whole lot going on, and let's start with this gem of a story, which is the Supreme Court is looking to rule on whether or not drug users are allowed to own firearms. Because, when you go, and I don't actually own a firearm. A lot of you guys are a lot cooler and more responsible than I am. At some point, I'll have a house, a dog, and a gun under my pillow that I will hope I don't shoot myself in the head while I fall asleep. I'm an irresponsible human being. I just lost a passport in a car. I respect everyone's right to own a gun. I think it's wise if you have a home that you should engage in actually protecting yourself. It's a little bit like, not your keys, not your wallet. I have all my money on Coinbase. I might be a good news analyst, but I will tell you that in my personal life, I make dumb, irresponsible decisions, which include leaving my car on street corners and having large bags of porch tour gear in and passports in the glove compartment for thieves to enjoy. So I don't make the best decisions. And for all of you guys out there that own guns and are actually engaging in taking responsibility for your own safety, I salute you. You're doing the right thing. So I'm not preaching don't own guns or don't man up and become more irresponsible. I'm just telling you that also I live in Connecticut. If I could just walk into a store and buy a gun, I would have a gun. It's a real pain in the ass out here. You got to play with the people, give them your dental records, thumbprints, fingerprints. They make it a whole to-do. At some point, it's one of those things that's on my to-do list. At some point, I'll get myself a gun. Luckily, a lot of the fans, they invite me out to go out shooting, so I don't have the worst shot. Although last time I went shooting, BK Chris did show me up. Listen, usually I'm a pretty good shot, but when we were exploding watermelons in the middle of a field in Pekin, Indiana, BK Chris really did show me up. But I didn't, no, there was no video evidence of that, so there was no reason for me to mention that either. Anyways, you've got this new Supreme Court case trying to address whether or not, if you are a habitual marijuana user, if you should be allowed to legally own a firearm. And I believe that people find themselves in a predicament at the moment that, let's say, for example, you're in a state that has medical marijuana and you are on the state registry for medical marijuana, and then you go and you get your gun form. I don't think you're legally allowed to own that firearm, and I don't think they ever cross-reference the two lists, but I do believe that you would technically be engaging currently in illegal behavior by signing the document that you're not a current drug user. Now, you guys in the chat, you're more familiar with guns, you're more familiar with marijuana usage, so you might be more knowledgeable on that topic. But at the moment, if you are a habitual drug user, I don't believe that you're allowed to legally own a firearm. And now you got the Supreme Court, and they have to decide on this thing. And the first thing that just kind of strikes me is that how can they possibly make a determination about drug usage and guns unless they've done drugs? And now not only would you need these, and now you might just go, well, it's a simple Supreme Court argument that says that you got a right to bear arms, and not if you're high, then you can't own the guns. And so it's got nothing to do with the usage. The practicality of how high you are has nothing to do with all of this. But I would think that if you were on the Supreme Court, you would want to know, hey, well, what's being really high like? And if I am really high, should I not have a gun in my hand? But the problem with that is that people that do drugs on a regular basis, they have a different threshold for it. Like some of you guys are waking and baking every morning. You could walk around with the gun on your hip. You're not going to be like me and go, shit, I forgot my gun. Or you might not get so high and be like, hey, what is this thing? And then accidentally shoot something. If it's your first time smoking weed and you accidentally took a 25 milligram edible and you're hallucinating your balls off and you look down in your hand, you realize you got a gun in your hand, that's a problem. But if you smoke weed all the time, you got a high threshold for marijuana, you can probably go out with some military rangers if you got some training and engage in a mission and have it not set you back at all. There is something interesting to the Supreme Court having to weigh on a case of drug usage if they don't actually have the lived experience. That's a very liberal term of how can they make a decision without the lived experience. So I think these guys got to go do drugs for a month and then come back. I would think the law should be simple. It's kind of like a car, which, by the way, I think that they should have drunk driving and high driving tests, that if you want to commit to enough of a lifestyle of engaging those activities all the time so you're well practiced in doing life activities while drunk or high, if you want to spend your whole life being drunk and you're good at being drunk and you're not a sloppy drunk and you can show up and prove to them that you're not a sloppy drunk, you should not have the same driving limits as everybody else. But I would think simple law, same as driving a car. You can be a guy who smokes weed, own a license, and drive a car. You're just not allowed to do it if you're extremely high. And if we catch you while you're doing it while you're extremely high, which really only be after you've caused a problem, I would think that's like, it's like you can operate your gun while high or drunk unless it's you can't operate unless you're high or drunk unless it's an emergency. I actually don't know what I just said there. There was a note and I was trying to read it and it didn't make sense as I was reading it. Anyways, let's just put a button on this. I think you should legally be allowed. This is what I was trying to say. You should legally be allowed to own a gun even if you are a habitual marijuana user. And you should even be allowed in emergency situations to use that gun if you're high. And then after the fact, if you messed up and you didn't use it correctly, then you're in trouble. Or if you were high and you made a bad decision because it wasn't an actual emergency, you were just too high, you would also be in trouble. Or if we find that you're just casually using your gun while you're high, then you would also be in trouble. But you can own the gun and you can't use it while you're high. But if you use it in an emergency and you turn out to be right, then you're free to go. Simple system. I could have just said the last part at the beginning and cut out all the other nonsense because I feel like that's a very practical solution. All right, here we go. Let's we can read some comments here. We got Runaway Slav. All gun laws are an infringement, and it's the Jews that want to take them from me. There you go. That makes sense. Big Simmies, that's right, Robbie. In MCH, it is a felony if you have medical marijuana license and you try to get a CPL or register a firearm. That's nonsense, especially if you consider the way that other pharmaceutical drugs might hinge your ability. Like, what happens if you're prescribed Adderall and then you decide to take the entire bucket of Adderall at once, and then you're walking around like Beavis and Butthead shaking your fists all angry and stuff? You're telling me you can still legally own that gun? Big simmies. You basically have to have a medical marijuana call or a CPL. Can't do both. Yeah, that's the way I thought that it was, and I disagree with that. I don't think that that should be the law. All right. Next is I was just looking up the difference in crime stats between people being drunk and people being high. And I don't think this is new information to anyone that listens here, but the rates of violent crimes and people in jail for committing crimes while they were drunk were clearly higher than them being high. And so if you wanted equal application of principles and your concern was that people under the influence of a substance are engaging in more crimes, you would obviously have to ban alcohol as well. And as more of the country drinks and would not tolerate that, it would stand to reason that all other drugs using other drugs should not prohibit your right to own a gun. But perhaps laws that you shouldn't be using them while intoxicated unless it's an actual emergency, and then it turns out they used it properly, in which case, totally vindicated. So you've got Virginia Guifree. The Clintons managed to take her out with a bus, which is impressive. You know, usually they got to convince people to suicide themselves, but somehow, and listen, I can't make claims like that. I don't actually know that the Clintons have autonomous controls over buses to run people over. I can't possibly make that claim. So anyways, Virginia Guifree passed away. And in her death, they published a book. And off the bat, you've got Prince Williams is giving up his knighthood. He might still be collecting checks, but, you know, she had some not nice things to say about him. She also had some damning things to say about a prime minister, which is assumed to be Ehud Barak. She didn't actually state the name, but sounds pretty nasty, sounds pretty violent. And a couple of my takeaways is, firstly, you know, I've heard these weird storylines about Epstein and his desire to procreate and have kids and see the earth. And it's like, you can just have kids. Like, why do you got to go through such weird hoops in having kids? If you're that interested in having kids and you're this good at manipulating women, you could probably manipulate a wife. And if you're this wealthy, you could probably even divorce the wife. You could probably even just go out on dates like a normal person and knock up some women. You could just swoon some people and have some kids. I don't understand why having kids was so complicated to Epstein. I also don't understand why this lady's red line was not being raped by Ehud Barak, but instead it was when Ghislaine and Epstein tried to convince her to carry a child for them. And once again, weird of Epstein that he doesn't just want to figure out a way normally to have kids. But hey, listen, yeah, what are you going to say about a guy with islands who's running blackmails? That running these kind of operations will warp your brain into having some weird ideas about procreation. Just one other thing I want to point out about Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't know if I've talked about this on the show, but I was very interested when I heard that her lawyer was arguing that she was not supposed to be prosecuted. And that's what Cosby got off for. Cosby got off that after spending 2 years in jail, he finally won a court case that when he admitted to certain things to prosecutors, he had been granted immunity. And apparently when Epstein was prosecuted in Florida, not only did he receive immunity, but co-conspirators received immunity as well. And now this is what the part that made no sense was they named 5 names. Actually, it was 4 names. And then they said, and also co-conspirators not mentioned. Now, I would think you got to go one or the other. You would think you'd have to go all co-conspirators and not mention any names, or once you mention names, then that would be to the exclusion of other names. I do find it quite fascinating that amongst the co-conspirators that were mentioned, Ghislaine Maxwell is actually not on the list. The names that were on the list, I'll read them off to you, is Sarah Kellen, Leslie Groff, Adriana Ross, Nadia Marcinkova, who are all just still out there in the world. Don't see a lot of media reporting about them. You don't see a lot of people digging into those stories. But amongst the story of Ghislaine being the chief gal pal of Epstein and running the whole operation, there's 4 women out there that were the ones that actually needed to be named as the co-conspirators. All right, I'm going to take one more story, and then I'll read some comments. And this is an award we haven't given out on the show for quite some time, but I've got the Autist of the Year award, which goes to this story in the New York Post. My nonverbal autistic son began speaking at age 8 after taking a wonder drug. He'd understood everything for years and had complaints. That's the most autistic thing in the whole world. You finally start talking, and the first words out of your mouth are all the indignities and injustices that you suffered over the last couple years. This child is my spirit animal. Can you imagine not being able to talk for 8 years and just keeping a mental log of all the things that you're really upset about, and then you have to get off your chest? And look at this little cute little sweetie pie over here, and he's upset about desserts. He's upset with the sandwich quality they've been feeding him. Is there anything more autistic than finally being able to speak and being like, the mom's almost like, can we have him speak, just not this much, just like a little bit, Is there anything you can do to like have him speak, but like not about all the things he's super irritated about, or maybe just like compliments? Can we maybe like lower or up the dosage to something that gets him speaking, but not complaining endlessly about travel and sandwich quality, and then his stomach being irritated? Here we go. He had a laundry list of everything that upset him throughout the years. His mother, Dr. Kathleen Schreiner, told the Post with a laugh, including grudges. I can't read it because I got something in my way, but grudges against his older sister and otherwise. Anyways, I respect you, kid. Keep those lists going. All right, and then one more quick news story, and then I see the comment section's going nuts. You guys are out on your lunch break. A lot of people joining us on their lunch break. I respect it. What are you guys eating? Trump's chosen prosecutor wastes no time. And you know what Trump does not get enough credit for? Is his empowerment of hot women. Because there was a long-running trope in this culture that very good-looking women were probably not all that intelligent or probably weren't go-getters. I mean, that was like the Legally Blonde. I don't know, the same way you got a trope in everything that, like, you know, the dad's a big old buffoon and mom's keeping it together. You also don't have ultra hot single chicks who are just crushing their careers in television. Maybe they're out. Maybe that's what the Sex and the City was about. Are they all career professionals, or are they just trying to find husbands that they can mooch off of while they spread their legs? I don't know. I never watched the show, but I would think for women empowerment out there, I mean, he's not helping the uggos. That he's doing you guys no favors. But if you're a smart hot chick out in the world, you would think, look at the feminist that Donald Trump is, that when he engages in central casting for the television show that is Donald Trump's presidency, he's constantly seeking out these incredibly hot lawyer types to pick up the slack so that he can throw them on television. You'd think some of the feminists would give Donald Trump credit for the effort he is making in empowering women. All right, let's take some comments. Got all sorts of stuff going on here. Big Simmies. That's right, Robbie. I already read that. Big Simmies. It's just weird that liquor laws and marijuana laws are different when they should be just the same. Just relax a little on the weed. Also, Michigan is increasing its sales tax on weed to 24%. TJ Hawthorne reposted the stream. Thank you, Mr. Hawthorne. Runaway Slav. Everyone knows alcohol treats, not cures, autism. I would agree with that. It temporarily. It's a temporary relief in which, if you can strike the right balance without hangovers the next morning, then you're just engaging in good medical science for how to reduce your autism symptoms of not wanting to be around other people or be sociable in any capacity. And then you're actually practicing the best in medicine in a way that you can only know what your body can handle and doctors can't, as they try and force other pharmaceuticals upon you. You know, I don't always agree with Runaway Slav, but on this one I do. Big Simmies, Pop-Tarts for lunch, lunch of champs, they say. That's a rough lunch. Rogie acts, as a CDL driver, I can drink all night, wake up hungover and drive, but I can't smoke on a Friday, get the best sleep of my life, and not be able to drive on Monday. That is a problem. Inconsistent. Runaway Slav, any mention of Trump turning his back on American cattle ranchers? I wasn't planning on talking about this in this I was not planning on talking about that in this episode. However, since you brought it up for yourself and for all the other people that love tariffs and love the idea that everything has to be American made, how do you like Donald Trump turning around and realizing that importing products from other countries can make it cheaper, and that some products going up in price is so unfavorable with the American people, he would rather have cheaper products be coming in than supporting the American jobs, even in a critical industry such as American-grown food. So if you prefer American jobs to lower prices, then Runaway Slav, be like Runaway Slav and be consistent in not liking that Trump is allowing for cheaper meat to be imported into the country. But DZ, you should always agree with Slav. That's ridiculous. Franlaven, FMK, Annapolina Luna, AOC, and MTG. I'm killing off AOC. She's just too annoying. I couldn't even stand her for one night. MTG, physically not really my type, but that's a loudmouth party lady. And then Annapolina Luna is clearly the best looking. However, long term, I might get along with MTG better than Annapolina Luna, but without having hung out with either of them, I mean, Annapolina, she's the best looking lady in Congress. I mean, how do you not marry that? Get rid of AOC, just take her off the earth and have one great night of doing cocaine and CrossFit with Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, that's not a bad list. And Runaway Slav with a comment that I will not be reading. All right, here we go. Last quick topic. You just got to love the hypocrisy of Marc Maron, that after he was bashing people for having, and I've already mentioned this, I've already mentioned the how dare you, the snobbery of liberals, that when they engage in the exact activity as other people, he's actually one of the OGs of platforming politicians on podcasts when he had Obama on to basically preach Obamacare. And then he also even had Hunter Biden on, gave him a fair shake. And then he goes nuts that the people that platformed Donald Trump and had him on podcast, the most reprehensible people ever for doing the exact same thing that he did. I'm just saying, if you want to autistically go, the horrible behavior is platforming a politician on a podcast. He did the exact same thing. And so sure, one was the politician he liked and one's the politician he didn't like. But I'm saying the actual activity that you think is reprehensible behavior, like, in other words, the action itself can't be the exact same action, and it's horrible when someone else does it because they have a different opinion, but it's moral and justice and right when you do it. It's the same exact. It's like handing the car keys to a person like that's hammered. You either say that that's something that you can't do or it's something that you can do. In your case, you platformed a politician. Someone else platformed a politician. Why is it that you're so smart? And so if you're platforming a politician, it's moral justice and right. But if it's a politician you don't like, then it's reprehensible. And so he doubled down on his hypocrisy by, I haven't listened to the episode, but it was reported he did his last episode of the podcast with Obama. With all that said, in the original run of the Marc Maron podcast, I used to have a job scanning papers. It was written up in the Wall Street Journal after Gallagher got thrown out. I was like, oh, I just started doing stand-up. He's interviewing comics. I'm like, this sounds interesting. And those original, like that run of episodes where I was probably listening to it 4 years when he was mostly having comics on, it was the greatest thing in the world because I thought I was like the biggest outcast weirdo. I'm sitting there scanning papers, going to open mics at night. I'd be like, oh, these people are also really weird. I think I found something, a world I might fit into. And so while I appreciated those episodes, this new garbage, you can't not take a moment and just call out the liberal hypocrisy of that. Just because you're a liberal, you get to feel like what you're doing is the most glorious, justified, and humane thing ever. And when other people have a different opinion for what might make for better policy, then they're the most reprehensible Hitler platforming people of all time. All right, now let's get into some topics with a real surface level skim. And we're going to do a real surface level skim because I don't have the full picture on this. I don't have all the deep diving and the reporting, but there were enough stories that I was seeing last week on these topics. I wanted to call them to your attention, and perhaps we'll see if there's a lot more coverage of these stories down the line, if there's more of a trend with these stories, or perhaps these are just scattered storylines that exist over the last 7 days, and they aren't all that worth paying attention to. And this segment is brought to you by sheath.com. Because if you want to wear the most comfortable underwear that's ever graced the balls of man, the only place in the world that you can find it is Sheath. I was just out hanging out in Florida. I had a great couple of days. It was nice to actually take 2 days off, sit by the beach, and have a nice time. And let me tell you, you can't survive those hot climates if you're not wearing your Sheath underwear. If you think that you're going to spend all day out in the hot sun with your fat thighs rubbing together and all that sweat coming down your legs and just continue and just ignore that painfully stinging feeling? You don't want to live that way, and you don't have to, because there's a solution, which is sheath.com. Use promo code RYM and you get yourself 20% off the greatest underwear that's ever graced the balls of man. Long-term sponsor of the Run Your Mouth podcast. People in the chat will tell you they're wearing sheaths right now, and they love it. Step up your underwear game. Sheath.com, promo code RYM. All right, so as I said, I don't know that I've not done a deep dive into these topics, but there was enough popping up last week that I did just want to get into it. And the topic is Donald Trump's corruption. And now, do I think Donald Trump is more corrupt than the Clintons, the Obamas, the Bidens, or any other politician? Absolutely not. And have I done a deep dive on these topics? No, but a couple stories came across that I think are worth taking note of. The first one, which is classic Donald Trump, is he's demanding that the Justice Department pay him $230 million for past cases, which is he had to defend quite a few lawsuits from the government. And now he wants to sue them and get his money back for all of what it cost him. And there's a bit of a conflict of interest that now the people overseeing these, the potential for him to bring these lawsuits, approve the lawsuits, or have a settlement, or people that he now put into the jobs. I think some of them might include his own personal lawyers. But like I said, surface level skim here. Now, there's a major problem if you are a victim of unnecessary lawsuits from the United States government, which is if they try and dig their hooks into you, they have endless money and resources, essentially, for prosecuting, which is a little bit disgusting if you think about how many more resources we use on prosecuting individuals versus public defenders. Or if you want to talk to people, there's a lot of corporations that engage in bad behavior, and then there's some that are just on the wrong side of government. And if you want to look at what the cost is of if the SEC or other ones decide to go against you, and listen, I'm sure the government takes down some bad individuals and some criminals. However, a lot of times when it's the major corporations, even when they're doing something really bad, they get basically get to bribe the government, admit no guilt, and pay large fines that I don't think find their ways to the victims of the crimes. I remember I used to read the second section of the Wall Street Journal. I don't anymore. And there was always some case of like JP Morgan case or some major financial player paying a fine of like a couple $1 billion, but admitting no guilt, which is essentially a bribe. Anyways, we've got a problem that if the government's trying to come after you and you want to defend yourself against the government has endless resources. And even if you win, it's going to cost you a boatload of money. There's actually an interesting book by Charles Murray where he described the Madison Fund, where he was basically trying to advocate for that someone should create an insurance fund specifically for lawsuits against the government to make it so expensive for the government to come after private corporations on like EPA type legislations that they would more regularly fold on bringing those lawsuits. Don't remember the book, but it was an interesting read. So now, in this case, government brought some bad lawsuits against Donald Trump solely because they were trying to sell to the American people that he was the most corrupt politician of all time. And clearly this guy can't be running for a guy indicted in 5 court cases that we conveniently brought up against him. That person clearly can't be president because we drummed up 5 whole court cases against him. And they tried to sell that story. That story didn't work. Donald Trump got bogged down in it. He had to hire lawyers. He had to go through those court cases. He was definitely done dirty. But in classic Donald Trump fashion, is he trying to fix the system so that other individuals will not fall prey to bad government practices of unnecessary lawsuits? Is he trying to address the structural problem of that government has endless amounts of money if it tries to go after you? Is he trying to create a new recourse that maybe if you can prove that the prosecutors were dirty in trying to go after you, there should be personal penalties towards them? Is there any actual structural change that he's proposing so that other people won't fall guilty to the same madness? It's a little bit like what just happened. He won a lawsuit against YouTube so that he can have more money for his ballroom, but he does nothing for the rest of us. or nothing to change the protocol of what can happen in the future by way of censorship. So you've got Donald Trump looking out for himself and going, hey, I want that money back. And listen, he might even deserve that money. He was done wrong. He was done wrong here. And but the problem is the victims here are essentially us. The taxpayers had to pay both to go prosecute him, and now we're gonna have to pay to make right to him. And nobody else has this kind of ability to put new people in place that will then just approve you being paid back, and it doesn't actually fix any of the structural problems in any capacity. Now with this, here are some other ones. You've got a potential pardon for the Binance CEO. You also have the amount of money that the Trump family has made off of various crypto projects. You have Trump hosting a corporate ballroom donor at glitzy White House dinner. And you've got a little bit of a conflict of interest here of that private companies are donating to the ballroom that Donald Trump wants. And they are all companies with big business that Donald Trump's policies influence how much business they have, which includes Lockheed Martin, Microsoft, Meta, Google, Amazon.com, and Palantir. And so, yeah, it's not directly in Donald Trump's pockets, but he does want that fancy ballroom so he can throw himself some fancy meals. And our government, with all the money our government has and all the money that it spends, I guess we can't afford to just have a ballroom for the president. And instead, we're going to accept money from private companies that have business in front of the government. And then you also had that little moment, hot mic moment, where Donald Trump says, I will have Eric call you. And this has to do with, I believe, the Trumps have licensing. I think they license their name in all sorts of areas. And they've also courted all sorts of investors for golf courses all over the world. There was another Wall Street Journal article about how a lot of their business partners out in India all have real checkered pasts. But, you know, other parts of the world are more corrupt. And if you're looking to get bundles of money so that you can put in a golf course, you're probably dealing with shadier business people than the crooks that we have in America who are running our giant corporations. So, you know, I don't know that that's the worst. I don't know that the licensing schemes of the Trump name while Trump is president by, you know, large companies and corporations abroad, if that's more corrupt than any of the grift of any other politicians, it doesn't seem great. And then this little hot mic moment with the Indonesian president of Donald Trump saying, well, I'll have Eric call you. All right, that's enough on this topic. Let's take a couple comments, and then we'll do our last thing. All right. Uncircumcised Circus. That's an excellent name. AOC can be a maid for Arnold Schwarzenegger, but then we'll end up with more AOCs combined with Arnold Schwarzenegger DNA. I mean, you want to talk about a super leftist in the future that might be able to win elections. I don't like that idea at all. Fronleven, what are you reading right now? How's that for some autism? Robin, but SCOTUS, have you ever been high? Robin, sorry, I'm a little bit behind. Fair enough. AT Lean 715, have sex with Luna, marry MTG, and kill AOC. You're just switching those two. Okay. Agreed. Surprise went with marry Luna and FMTG. You guys would all, I mean, listen, I feel like Luna is also going to be a slightly more docile life partner. MTG, that's going to be a constant battle. You might have some good fornication there, but I mean, you're dealing with some loud bad shit all the time. I mean, maybe that's what you guys like, is a feisty power bottom of a lady that wants to give you shit and fight you all the time. I don't know what kind of strong mothers you had that you want to be talked down to and given shit all the time, or just how alpha male you are that you're like, I can tame that psycho. Runaway Slav, USDA regulations keep livestock management costs high for ranchers in America. Listen, I am all for less regulation. No arguments for me on that. All right, just a quick glance at the situation down in Venezuela, which apparently Marco Rubio is really pushing for. And of course, we already did a part of problem on this, but they seem to be lying to us about the narco terrorism. But as I've said before, going after just the narcotics from Venezuela and not the other places. You're basically just in the drug business. You're not cleaning up the drug business. Then you also got taking out all these boats and saying, well, those were a bunch of dirty narco terrorists. And yet you never did a trial. You never proved it or any of that stuff. And now, usually you try and be very hush-hush where you're like, I had no idea the CIA was doing that thing. But now Donald Trump's on the television going like, CIA, get after them, take out whatever you got to take out, go stir up some shit. And so it does seem like Donald Trump is looking to overthrow, is it Maduro? I think so, out in Venezuela. And I was just curious to know what the oil storyline is out there. Because, they never actually tell you the geopolitics of this stuff or why they're really concerned about one place and not another place. But apparently, this slide has nothing to do with this. But apparently, I also am very stupid and get Venezuela and Argentina confused in my head all the time. So I think we're talking about Maduro and Venezuela, and that's the country that we're looking. I don't know why. It's like the Helen Keller and Anne Frank thing. You just confuse it in your mind. I always confuse Argentina and Venezuela. I just do. Anyways, there's a shit ton of oil down there, and I wonder if maybe trying to reduce foreign dependence on oil or limit China's ability to get that oil or something might actually have something to do with it. All right, let's cover one last topic and call it an episode, which is another going to be just a quick skim of some of the recent tariff news. First, we've got rare earth stocks soar after mega U.S.-Australia minerals deal to slash dependence on China. I want to read this one paragraph. President Donald Trump and Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese signed a mineral deal on Monday at the White House to expand America's rare earth supply in a diverse way away from China's dominance in critical minerals used in EVs, semiconductors, and defense weapons. Beijing's weaponization of rare earth shipments to gain leverage over President Trump in trade negotiations underscores the urgency of diversification. In about a year from now, we'll have so much critical minerals and rare earth that you won't know what to do with them, President Trump said at the White House with PM Albanese. Firstly, I thought that part of what China was so good at was actually processing all of this stuff. And I keep hearing that the reason why China's so good at processing all this stuff is because they've been doing it longer and they've got trade secrets. I'm also guessing that that's more of an environmental regulation thing, that they just do not care about the environment. And so they're doing things that we just wouldn't want to be doing over here. And that's partially why they're able to be so good at processing. So I don't know to what extent just having more rare earth available helps if you're not actually able to process that rare earth. But maybe we get there as well. But I thought what was interesting about this is that, you can get this deal done without threatening China. In fact, I would think what would make more sense is you just play all cool and nice with China, and then you make agreements like this that you have more leverage or that you're not as reliant. Like, why would you blow up your current supply line without securing the other supply line first? Doesn't it make more sense to procure the other supply? Like, in other words, like, you know what I mean? You get to a point where you realize, oh, we're a little bit too dependent on China. We better not let them know that we're so dependent on them. That would be bad if they realize that. All right, what moves can we make to make sure that we're actually not that dependent on them? And then you do all these things, and then you turn around and you're like, oh, look, we don't even really need a China anymore anyways. It just seems, it's like the way it's presented was, oh, we threatened the shit out of China, and now we've got a major problem, but then we found this, and it's like, you could have just done this without that. And now, on this note, for all you people who gave me so much shit about the Donald Trump grand master plan and tariffs, at least Slav is being honest here and going, oh, look, Trump is selling us out because now he wants to import beef and he doesn't really care about American jobs. But a lot of you guys, you're holding on to that Donald Trump has some grand master plan. And my God, these tariffs are going to bring back American jobs. And it was really important for us to have these tariffs. Here was an article last week in the Wall Street Journal. The U.S. is tiptoeing away from many of Trump's signature tariffs. The Trump administration is quietly watering down some of the tariffs that underpin the president's signature economic policy. President Trump in recent weeks has exempted dozens of products from a so-called reciprocal tariffs and offered to carve out hundreds more goods from farm products to airplane parts when countries strike trade deals with the U.S. The offer to exempt more products from tariffs reflects a growing sentiment among administration officials that the U.S. should lower levies on goods that it doesn't domestically produce. Say people familiar with the administration planning. That notion has been emerging over time within the administration, said Everett Eisenhower, deputy national blah, blah, blah. There's definitely that recognition. So firstly, on the Grand Master Plan, you guys didn't consider that on things that we don't actually make in the U.S. or currently have the capacity to make in the U.S., maybe we should. I mean, you guys thought that this was a grand master plan from Donald Trump on the economy. And now 6 months into tariffs are realizing, oh, on some of the things that we can't even make here or won't be able to make here, it doesn't really make sense to drive up the costs on those. Because firstly, I guess they don't really care about American jobs. Oh, those could all be American jobs. Those could be making in American factories. And what about all the jobs that are produced off of those goods coming in? Or maybe, like, what is the plan here of if we're going to engage in central planning about more jobs and the importance of making in America? Don't you want to have our factory here first before you cut off the access to that good coming in? Oh, but Donald Trump, he's brilliant. Master 4D chess plan. I mean, couldn't he have accounted that at 6 months ago when he initially made this policy and you guys thought he's the most brilliant person on all of human earth? And when people were going, hey, I don't even think you can make these things in America. And if it's important for us to have these things here, shouldn't we have a plan for how we're going to make it here before we shut off the supply? Well, once we shut off the supply, then instantly we'll have factories because we're going to need the thing. Oh, 6 months later, I guess that doesn't work. Are you guys willing to Grand Master Plan, everybody? 6 months later, acknowledging the obvious on things that we don't currently have the production capacity to make here. Maybe we shouldn't tariff from other places. No, Grand Master Plan. If we just shut off the switch of it coming in, we'll figure out how to do it. Oh, has anyone actually done the math on how long it takes to have a factory that can do that thing? No. Because when we engage in central planning, Donald Trump's so good at it, he can just wave his magic wand of what's going to work, and it's just going to work. Now, part of this, you might go, well, he's walking away with a win. Like it said early in the article, it's where he was able to strike deals with the U.S., and I will not be able to answer this question for you, but I guess, because I don't even know how to evaluate it, it's if the win of slight reduction in tariffs from other countries or whatever the trade deals were better than lost economic production in the United States of America for the amount of time that companies weren't sure what policies might be enacted, or future lost investment because people don't know what the United States actual market environment will be like. Not a question I will be able to answer for you. Did I have any other thoughts on this? I don't think so. Let's read these two other paragraphs. On Friday, Trump unveiled his latest action under Section 232, imposing 25% tariffs on trucks and truck parts, as well as 10% tariff on buses, effective November 1st. As part of that action, Trump also expanded a tariff relief program for automakers, allowing them to apply for credits for partially offset the cost of tariffs on cars, trucks, and parts until 2030 instead of 2027. Another example of favoritism, that if you are a large enough body, you're able to lobby the government and explain the hardship of the tariffs against you to get specific carve-outs that smaller businesses will not be able to as well. And then the last one is aimed at products that cannot be grown, mined, or naturally produced in the United States. The order states such as certain agricultural products, aircraft and aircraft parts, and patented articles used in pharmaceutical applications. And once again, just pointing out, for all of you who swore by Donald Trump's Grand Master Plan, how were they not aware of that 6 months ago? All right. Let's take a couple comments, and then I think I'm going to skip this last part. All right. Let's take some comments. Leap Actual. All the Venezuela talk makes me want to go play Ghost Recon Windlands again. Such a great game. I know, the Ghost Recall games, there was the other Tom Clancy ones that I liked, and then there was the Black Ops or whatever, which was like too much like having to move in the shadows and not be seen. And I was like, I'm a runner and gunner. That's my ADD. Maybe you're talking about the one that I liked. A fix, Autist of the Year. Am I finally getting an award? Maybe you should. I mean, the real award should go for whatever guy doesn't shut up about docking. Big Simmies, at this point, I'm fully convinced Trump said whatever we wanted to hear just so he'd win. He legit backtracked on 90% of his positions. John Winseker, it's almost like central planning doesn't work. I know what I've said 1,000 times. Everyone's like, oh, it's not central planning. But what do you call it when instead of the free market, government engages in a policy to increase the cost of items to create a policy for more U.S. jobs? Well, look at all the things that they didn't think about. I know, that's the whole point. Matzo balls. Whoa, you guys, some of us knew Trump is retarded just slightly better than Kamala. Well, we all knew that. Frohenlaven, Rob, you see the beef between Hans Hermann Hoppe and Javier Milei? I have not. Nor do I have anything on Javier Milei is a bit of a character. And I don't know enough about what he's done down there to endorse him or shame him. All right, that's it. That's our episode. Thank you for hanging out. We'll be back probably 2 next week because I think I'm going to do one over the weekend, and then we'll do one on Wednesday, which either 1 or 5 p.m. I haven't really figured out what I'm doing with my life. Anyways, thank you for hanging out. That's the episode. Porchstore.com. Get your